Turns out it wasn't you back then. Let's get a divorce. On the very day my husband found out about the old case from 2 years ago, he drew up the divorce agreement and threw it in my face. Then he turned around and hugged his white moonlight and moved into our wedding house. The agreement clearly stated that we got together because of a misunderstanding, and now that the misunderstanding had been cleared up, our marriage was coming to an end. I had originally wanted to defend myself, but when I saw the terms in the divorce agreement, I decided to endure humiliation and accept this reality. I quickly picked up a pen and signed the agreement. I looked up and asked him, "When are we going to the Civil Affairs Bureau?" After all, without getting the divorce certificate, we wouldn't be officially divorced, and the terms in the agreement couldn't be implemented. I was really anxious. Jackson's eyes were very gloomy. "I'm busy recently. Wait for my notice." "Hey, you." Before I could even finish my sentence, he just took off, leaving me and the 1,000-square-meter villa behind. I turned around and looked at this huge house, feeling a pang of emotion in my heart. I wondered how many shifts I'd have to work to be able to afford just one floor tile here. But now, as long as we got the divorce certificate, this house would be mine, along with an additional 500 million yuan. I really hoped that Jackson could spare a little bit of time and hurry up to get this done. Afterwards, he could be with his white moonlight, and I would live my lonely life as a divorcee, left only with money and a luxurious house. I patiently waited at home for a week. When my friends asked me to go out and have fun, I didn't dare to move. However, Jackson didn't come to me. Afraid that something might go wrong if I waited too long, I took the initiative to go find him. I called and found out that he was in our former wedding house in the city. I quickly drove there. I pressed the password, and the door opened with a ding. I immediately covered my eyes. Sorry. You guys continue. I'll come back later." I backed out of the door and secretly blamed myself for being too rash. Although this was my home, but now that I was getting a divorce, I should have knocked politely. It was really embarrassing to startle the two lovebirds. I also didn't know if it would affect Jackson's mood about getting the divorce. "Come in." Jackson's low, angry voice came from inside the door. He must be blaming me for disturbing their good time. What a sin. I carefully stepped through the door and put on a smile first. I really didn't mean it just now. He gave me a sharp look. Ariella had already moved from his lap to the sofa beside him and also gave me a roll of her eyes. But her voice was sweet as she said, "Sister Ariella, why didn't you go out to play today and thought of coming here instead?" I waved my hands repeatedly. No. Don't call me sister. My mother didn't give birth to a younger sister for me. I only have a younger brother, and he can't possibly have a sex change. I can go out to play anytime. But I can't delay coming to see Jackson. He's still my husband for now, and he's the most important. I didn't know which sentence touched Jackson's heartstrings, but he lifted his eyelids and looked at me. It seemed that he also snorted through his nose. But I didn't hear it clearly. I was only concerned about one thing now. Today was Wednesday, and the Civil Affairs Bureau was open for work as usual. Could he actually go and get the divorce certificate or not? Before I could start talking about the serious matter, Ariella butted in again. "You deceived Jackson like that, and you still have the nerve to say he's the most important. How ridiculous." I took a deep breath. I firmly suppressed the urge to slap this old two-faced person. Getting the divorce was the most important thing. I couldn't make a scene yet. Yes, I'm quite ridiculous. And I don't have the face to cling to President Jackson anymore. So can we go and get the divorce certificate now? Jackson and Ariella both gave me a puzzled look at the same time. Oh my God. Apparently, they had forgotten such an important thing. I quickly took out the divorce agreement from my bag and explained, "Jackson, we signed the agreement a week ago. Let's hurry up and get the certificate done. Look at this wedding house, this decoration, right? You can make good use of it again while it's still new." "How nice." Ariella's eyes lit up. But his look seemed to want to kill me. Jackson glared at me for a few seconds and said coldly, "In such a hurry?" I put on a fake smile and glanced at Ariella beside him. Isn't it you who's in a hurry? Jackson's fair and handsome face instantly turned as black as the bottom of a pot. Your affairs haven't been investigated clearly, and the accounts haven't been settled. If you want to leave, it won't be that easy. This scoundrel. I knew he had ulterior motives. The divorce agreement was just used to keep me in check so that he could be with Ariella righteously. In fact, he wanted a divorce but was reluctant to give me a penny. Fine, if you're heartless, don't blame me for being unjust. If a man wants to leave, I won't hold him back, but if he wants to touch my money, that's out of the question. I went back to the big villa and entered Jackson's study. In the 2 years since I married him, although I spent my days eating, drinking, and having fun everywhere, I still had some wits about me. After all, he wasn't exactly a kind and gentle person. He had quite a lot of bad records. I had peeked at the computer password before. When I typed it in the box, my hands were shaking a little, afraid that I might make a mistake. Fortunately, with a swish, the screen opened. The desktop background immediately caught my eye. It was a photo of Jackson and a woman snuggling up to each other. Jackson had his face half turned, looking at the other person affectionately, while the woman was looking into the distance. The photo was taken from behind, so I couldn't see the woman's face. But my blood pressure went up. This scoundrel. Besides Ariella, he actually had another mistress? And he blatantly put it on the computer desktop. I had no idea about it before. I shed a sad tear for my past stupidity. Then, I quickly took out my phone, took a picture of the photo first, and then opened his office files. I didn't even have time to read the content carefully. I directly copied and pasted it, putting all the materials into my computer. After making sure that everything had been transferred, I turned to his drawers and the safe. Fortunately, I usually behaved like a virtuous wife, and Jackson didn't guard against me in this regard. The drawers weren't locked, and I took pictures of all the files inside with my phone. As for the safe, I emptied it. After doing all these, I quickly restored his study to its original state. Then I casually went back to my own room. I locked the door from the inside with a click. I grabbed a pack of dried meat and sat in front of the computer and started the intense work. There were a lot of company files, but the most important ones were the financial ones. It was related to my major. I fixed my eyes on the numbers on the screen and read them line by line. Soon I found the problems inside. Every month, Jackson had a considerable expense with the account blank and the name of the person not filled in. The reason was personal use. I remembered that I also knew the password of his personal bank card. I immediately opened the bank app. Damn it. There was also a considerable expense in it every month. This one did have an account name on it. But it wasn't any of his clients. What was Jackson doing? Transferring property? It didn't seem like it. Giving it to his mistresses? My blood pressure rose again. My hand holding the mouse stiffened. Until I opened the last file. The truth suddenly emerged, hitting me like a blow to the head. It wasn't about mistresses, bribery, or property transfer. I was shocked silly by the scene in front of me. I didn't even hear the sound of cars downstairs. When I realized that Jackson had come back, he was already outside my door, banging on it loudly. Ariella, come out here. Go to hell. I quickly shut down the computer and swept all the files, cards, and the things I took from the safe on the desktop into the cabinet. I deliberately put a lock on it. Only then did I pick up the dried meat and slowly walk towards the door. Jackson was standing outside, his face as cold as if it had just snowed on it. You? So fast? I took the initiative and deliberately glanced down at him. His face became even frostier on top of the existing coldness. Just touched my card. His voice was equally gloomy. It was a statement. I was extremely panicked inside. But I pretended to be calm and said, I just took a look. I didn't touch your money. Why are you yelling? Jackson narrowed his eyes. The narrow space between his eyes was full of hostility. I held out the dried meat in my hand as a shield. Just finished exercising. Want a piece of beef to replenish energy? He snorted disdainfully and walked away, shaking his hand. He was headed towards the study. The dried meat fell to the ground with a snap. I rushed after him. Jackson, what do you mean by not getting a divorce after signing the agreement? Do you think I'm easy to bully? I didn't know if he had discovered something. His target was too clear. I couldn't take the risk and let him succeed. Otherwise, it would be even harder to get divorced. Jackson turned sideways and stared at me with deep eyes. You're easy to bully? Yes, you're bullying me right now. You've already slept with other women, yet you still won't get a divorce and are keeping me hanging. What's your point? I pulled him downstairs. The Civil Affairs Bureau hasn't closed yet. Let's go get the certificate. After that, you can do whatever you want. He got angry because of my push. Fine, don't regret it. Whoever regrets it is a dog. He shook off my hand again. Go get the documents. The documents, they were in the study. I quickly moved sideways and blocked the door. Jackson, wait a moment. He looked at me sideways, his eyes full of suspicion. I seriously suspected that Ariella had already whispered something in his ear while they were in bed, and this guy was starting to act strange. Did you go into my study? Jackson's voice was very low with certainty in it. No, I insisted firmly. I wanted to tell you that since we've been husband and wife, how about having a meal together before getting divorced? He started looking me up and down. After a while, he nodded as if he was doing me a favor. I had just let out a sigh of relief when I heard him say, I'll go in and get something. Oh, my heart was going up and down. I still had to pretend that everything was okay. It's better to ease the situation than to block it. If I forcibly stopped him from entering, it would definitely arouse this scoundrel's suspicion. I took a deep breath and opened the door for him and even followed him in obsequiously. I was looking around nervously, afraid that I might have left something out of place and be discovered by Jackson. Fortunately, he just took a file on the table. I watched him leave the study and didn't even dare to change my clothes before following him out. Judging from the passionate reunion between Jackson and Ariella after having a meal, he wouldn't come back tonight. Then I could openly enter the study and get all his documents ready. I'd call him to go directly to the Civil Affairs Bureau tomorrow morning. An hour later, the dinner was over. Jackson said, I'll take you home and pick up the documents along the way. We'll get the certificate done tomorrow morning. I wanted to knock him out. Sitting in the car was like sitting on pins and needles. Even Jackson noticed it. Do you have hemorrhoids? Nonsense. I gave him a sideways glance and, noticing his phone in the armrest box, immediately changed my tone. Jackson, can I use your phone? He snorted coldly. I took it as his consent and quickly grabbed it. Sorry, I knew the password for this too. After opening it, I took several pictures of the two of us. Without daring to stop, I immediately posted them on Moments. Ariella lived up to my expectations, and her call came right in. I answered the call for Jackson and kindly put it on speakerphone, holding the phone close to him. Ariella sounded weak and helpless. Jackson, I have a terrible headache. When will you come back? Jackson left me on the roadside. I tried my best to put on a sad look and waved to him. I'll bring the documents for you. Take good care of her. Without waiting for him to go far, I immediately stopped a taxi and rushed home. First, I went into the study. I got the documents and carefully checked for any loopholes. There was no way I could put the things from the safe back. If Jackson wanted to delay the divorce or had other motives, I had to find some leverage for myself first. Those things were my bargaining chips. I went back to my room and quickly turned on the computer. It was full of various photos and witness statements. They were from 2 years ago. I thought this matter had already ended with Ariella's departure long ago. Never did I expect that Jackson had been investigating it all along. Those privately transferred funds should have been used for this as well. I was acting with him here, being eager to get divorced and leave, letting him have an ambiguous and affectionate relationship with Ariella. Maybe he was also acting with me, setting up a new scheme to make me leave the marriage with nothing. A pair of scoundrels. They failed to set me up 2 years ago and instead got beaten by me. 2 years later, they wanted to try again and harm me once more. I summoned all my wits and wisdom and quickly read through the materials. The past scenes also came back to my mind. Jackson and I had known each other since we were teenagers and had always been classmates. After being admitted to the same university, we officially started a romantic relationship. He was the one who chased me relentlessly, saying that he would take care of me and love me in the future and wouldn't let me suffer any harm or grievance. But the first time he met my roommate Ariella, he couldn't take his eyes off her. I was really angry. It wasn't that I loved Jackson deeply, but how could I allow others to covet what was mine? I could discard this person or thing and let anyone pick them up. But if others wanted to snatch them from me or betray me without discussing with me, playing the field like that, then they would have to pay the price. So when Ariella secretly dated Jackson, took pictures and posted them on Moments, even my other good sisters in the dorm couldn't stand it and had a big fight with her. I remained calm. They were angry that I was so meek and felt sorry for me being bullied by Ariella, so they isolated her even more. Ariella was fine with it and took the opportunity to move out and live on her own. It just made it more convenient for her to be with Jackson. I had already made a plan to deal with her. Unexpectedly, she was even more ambitious and set a trap for me first. I played the role of being weak, pitiful, and stupid, saw through her plan and cooperated with her. Moreover, while dealing with Ariella, I accidentally learned that Jackson didn't seem to live with her. I didn't know if it was for the sake of reputation or if their relationship wasn't as good as rumored. In short, Ariella was worried about this. She thought that my existence had affected the development of her relationship with Jackson. So, she wanted to get rid of me as soon as possible. I had never seen anyone so brazen about stealing someone else's man before. I couldn't wait to see her methods and plans. One weekend, Ariella challenged me and asked me to meet outside the city. She said she wanted to talk to me about Jackson. Of course, I readily agreed. On the day of the meeting, I made all the preparations and arrived on time. Following the address given by Ariella, I took several turns and finally stopped outside an abandoned pig farm. Ariella's messages stopped right after that. I didn't expect you really dared to come. I sent a weak reply. Where is this? Where are you? I can't see you. I'm so scared. If you don't come out, I'll go back. She sent a series of voice messages with laughter. She directed me, open the iron gate and go inside. There was a big rusty iron gate outside the pig farm, slightly ajar. I could push it open and enter. After going in, I quickly looked into all the pigsties. There was no one and there were no deadly traps set up either. It seemed that Ariella wasn't as ruthless as I thought. My eyes fixed on the innermost room. She told me in the voice message that she was waiting for me in there. After sending a message on my phone, I walked forward. The expression on my face was one of fear. I was looking around carefully and asking Ariella from time to time where she was. She replied quickly and could accurately direct me to keep moving forward. From this, I could tell that she was also here. That put my mind at ease. When I pushed open the door she had specified, someone immediately grabbed my hair and yanked me inside. The door behind me slammed shut with a bang, kicking up a cloud of dust that almost got into my eyes. Ariella was sitting on a broken chair, with one leg crossed over the other, looking rather like a big sister in charge. There were two men standing behind her, and together with the two who were holding me, there were 4 men in total. Judging from their clothes and appearance, they might be gangsters, and their eyes looked fierce. I timidly begged for mercy. I forced out a teardrop from my eyes, looking pitiful and trembling. Against 4 men and 1 woman, it was definitely not possible for me to fight them head-on. However, I didn't come here alone either. Now, before the fight broke out, I just wanted to ask this big sister if she had made arrangements for what would happen after she lost. Ariella was even more impatient than I was. As soon as she saw me, she started scolding, "Ariella, you bitch. Jackson clearly doesn't love you. Why are you still clinging to him?" I looked innocent. "No, I'm not clinging to him." "Isn't he with you?" This sentence really hit a nerve. Ariella gritted her teeth at me. I exclaimed, "Really? He's not with you? I've already given him up." "Why isn't he with you?" One of the men beside her, getting the cue from Ariella's look, raised his hand to slap me in the face. The pepper spray in my pocket had been waiting eagerly for this moment. I just sprayed him with it. The man let out an ouch and staggered back, shivering. The remaining three, seeing that I was well prepared, immediately surrounded me. Ariella got fierce and said, "Deal with her. You can do whatever you want with her. I just need to take a few pictures." She took out her phone and got ready to take pictures. The three men surrounded me in a fan shape. The one who had been electrocuted and fell to the ground also struggled to get up, trying to join in quickly, but at this moment, the door behind me was suddenly kicked open with a boom. My younger brother, leading a group of young boys from the sports school, rushed in with a whoosh. It was chaos. These young guys didn't have much else, but they had brute strength. And they were in the majority. They beat the few men until they were wailing and running away with their heads in their hands. Having finally found a chance for revenge, there was no way I would let them get away. I walked towards Ariella. The look in her eyes gradually turned to fear as she saw me. "Ariella, what do you want to do?" "Be a bitch," I replied to her seriously. "You said I'm being a bitch. I'll show you what being a bitch is like." I slapped her hard on both sides of her face with my left and right hands, then raised my hand and grabbed her hair too. When I was grabbed by the hair when I first entered the door, it really hurt. So when I grabbed Ariella's hair, I deliberately grabbed a little less and wrapped it around my fingers. She screamed even louder. It was so ear-piercing. So I pushed her to the ground. Those black lumps, I didn't know what they were. Maybe they were the pig manure that hadn't been cleaned up. Anyway, I stuffed some into her mouth to make her stop screaming. Jackson simply rolled his eyes at me. I fried some eggs and warmed up some milk, and we had a simple meal. I reminded him, "Let's go get the divorce certificate." He slapped the chopsticks on the table with a snap. "Why are you in such a hurry? I've already said that this matter hasn't been investigated clearly yet. I didn't want to be outdone. You've already determined that the person who took care of you 2 years ago wasn't me. How come it hasn't been investigated clearly?" The look in his eyes darkened again as he looked at me. "Then tell me who set that fire?" I used to be very reluctant to mention this. But now I gritted my teeth and faced it. "I don't know. Anyway, it has nothing to do with me, my brother or his friends." I added, "Maybe it was Ariella. After all, she was the one who asked me to meet her 2 years ago." Jackson's face sank again. I sneered at him, "Don't be like this. She's just your white moonlight, not mine. So it's only natural for her to be mean to me." His brows furrowed deeply. "Why didn't you tell me about this before?" I was even more puzzled than him. Why should I have told you? Would he have believed me if I had? Under that situation back then, Ariella was clearly holding on to my leg, not letting me leave, but he still blindly asked me to let go. If I had told him later that it was all Ariella's plot, would he have believed me? And in the past 2 years, there hadn't been any news about Ariella from my side. Who would bring her up for no reason? It's bad luck that I stood up from the table. "I'm going to change clothes. Let's go to the Civil Affairs Bureau at 9 o'clock. Jackson didn't answer. I took it as his agreement and walked upstairs by myself. After changing clothes and coming downstairs, damn it, Jackson had disappeared again. I angrily called him. He answered quite quickly, but said to me, "I'm with Ariella right now. Let's talk about things another day." Without waiting for my reply, he hung up with a beep. Damn it. I was so angry that I almost spat blood. I couldn't stay at home anymore, so I simply drove to find my brother. He was very busy with training. He met me briefly at the school gate and was about to turn back. I grabbed him, looking serious. "Elias, I'll ask you again, very seriously. Do you really not know who set the fire at the pig farm 2 years ago?" My brother jumped up. "Damn it. Are you still my real sister? How many times have I told you? We're from the sports school. We're the future of the country. Would we do something like that?" He argued righteously, "Helping you beat up those who bullied you is self-defense. But setting a fire is a crime. Do you think your brother has no sense of propriety?" I quickly comforted him. "You have a sense of propriety, of course. It's all my fault for being so useless." He tilted his head and looked at me. "You're not right. What's going on? I gave him a bitter smile. Ariella is back. Damn it. I'll kill her. Did he forget at this moment that he was a young bud and the future of the country? I didn't get any useful information from Elias. I tried to find those people who had helped Ariella before. I had looked for them before, but after the fire incident, they left the city and disappeared without a trace. Now that the situation was urgent, I went to the police station. There was a record of our case there, and maybe I could find out where they had gone. As a result, outside the police station, I ran into my good-for-nothing husband again. Jackson was coming out of the police station. Seeing me, he didn't seem surprised either. He just greeted me. Let's go. Get in the car. I'll tell you whatever you want to know. I sat in the passenger seat and turned to him. I want a divorce. Let's divorce as stated in the agreement. His face immediately turned sour again. He drove the car like a spaceship and rushed home in one go. He gave me a fierce look. Apart from this, don't you have anything else to say to me? Still not satisfied, he asked again. We've been in love for over 10 years, married for 2 years, and we've slept together. If it weren't for you, for your awkwardness, we would already have children by now. You just say you want a divorce just like that. Don't you have any feelings for me at all? I was dumbfounded. I thought Jackson had a fever. I even wanted to jump up and touch his forehead. This confused guy, what on earth was he talking to me about? We had only known each other for over 10 years. We hadn't even been officially in a relationship for a year before he hooked up with Ariella. Moreover, it was he who first brought up the divorce. How come in the end, he became like a wrong little wife, talking about feelings with me? Jackson took advantage of my daze and walked upstairs with a thud. After climbing a few steps, he turned around. Come up. I looked up at him. His complexion wasn't normal. It was a bit pale, and his eyes were red. Could he really be sick? I slowly followed him upstairs. When I entered his study, he had just put down his water glass. He gestured to me, sit. I sat down opposite him at the wooden table and still stared at his face. He really didn't look normal. There were some fine beads of sweat on his forehead and his lips were pale. Are you sick? He shook his head. Angry because of you. Ha! As if I hadn't asked. Jackson took out a file bag from his bag. What were you doing at the police station? I shook my head. I was too lazy to tell him. He gave me an annoyed look. Looking into the fire incident 2 years ago, right? Since you know, why ask? Anyway, it had nothing to do with my brother and his friends. I know. You know? I almost jumped up. If you know, why did you keep threatening me with this every day? He probably didn't want to explain anything to me at all. He threw the file bag over. When I poured out the contents inside, I felt really bad. When was this? These were found out a long time ago, but it was only recently that we connected them all together. I slammed the file bag onto the table. Then why didn't you tell me earlier? Jackson didn't say a word and just frowned as he looked at me. I wasn't sure if it was my illusion, but Jackson's state today was really off. His eyes were different from before. We had been married for 2 years. As for our married life, well, it was just so. Anyway, I couldn't get enthusiastic about it. He would occasionally send me some flowers and jewelry. Seeing that I was neither cold nor warm towards them, he just let it be. It seemed that he was too lazy to make an effort as well. Our state had always been like we were just living together out of convenience. But today, I found that the coldness and restraint in his eyes were gone. It seemed that there was something burning inside them, as if it was about to burst out of his pupils. This thought made me unable to get into an argument with him with much energy. I sat back in the chair and suddenly felt a bit choked up. I've been so scared all along that this matter was related to Elias and them. I've been scared for 2 years. You should have told me earlier. I'm sorry, Jackson said. I suddenly looked up and saw that his eyes were even redder. He seemed to realize this too and quickly turned his head away, staring at a corner of the study. After a while, he turned back again. It's not that I didn't want to tell you. It's just that this matter hadn't been fully investigated. The statements of the few people we caught were all the same, and they had nothing to do with the person we suspected was behind the scenes. I didn't understand this point. The person you suspected? Yes. The 4 people at the pig farm in Ariella all said that they were hired by someone to target you. My brain was a bit slow and I didn't understand this question even more. Did I offend some big shot other than Ariella? I wasn't sure if Jackson was angry because of my question, but he snapped, "Then you should ask yourself." Ask myself? Well, of course I'm loved by everyone and charming like a flower, although I was a bit wild when I was at school. I was the kind of person who wouldn't offend others unless they offended me first. Ariella was the odd one out in my circle of friends, but I guessed that if I said this, Jackson wouldn't tell me any more of the truth. So I wisely shut my mouth. After he calmed down from his anger, he explained, "The person they mentioned is very likely the arsonist. But we didn't catch him at that time and he got away." I got worried. What about now? Jackson gave me another sharp look. I didn't take it seriously and just regarded it as a flirtatious glance. I even gave him an impatient smile. Has he been caught now and is there any new progress in the matter? Just as he was about to speak, his cell phone rang loudly. I looked at his screen. It was Ariella. Jackson signaled me to keep quiet and then answered the call. Jackson. Ariella was actually crying. And it didn't seem like she was acting this time. Jackson, where are you? I don't know what's going on. I'm going to be arrested by the police. I'm at the police station now. Could you come here? Could you bring your lawyer with you? Jackson's voice was calm and there was no sign of worry at all. Okay, I'll be there right away. After saying that, he hung up the phone, then he looked up at me. I also looked at him. What do you mean? He wasn't satisfied with my reaction and let out a cold laugh. Want to come with me? Since Ariella had been arrested, of course I wanted to go. Jackson didn't bring a lawyer but only took me with him. On this day, the 2 of us went to the police station for the second time. Ariella was also very surprised to see me. Why did you bring her here? Jackson started to act tough. She's my wife. Isn't it right to bring her along? Ariella's face obviously started to fall apart. I was so afraid that her newly done nose couldn't take it and would burst. Looking carefully, it seemed that she had also done something to the corners of her eyes and her lips this time. Now I didn't dare to make any big moves even more. Jackson pulled out a chair for me and sat down opposite her with me. His expression was completely different from when I saw them in our new house that day. Jackson looked at her expressionlessly. What's going on? Why did they arrest you? Ariella immediately started crying again. I don't know. I was just preparing lunch for you at home when they came and arrested me. The corner of Jackson's mouth twitched almost imperceptibly, as if he was sneering. Ariella was still talking. Jackson, quickly ask your lawyer to come. I can't stay here. If my fans find out about this, I'm done for. Oh, I forgot to mention that Ariella was now a somewhat famous star and was preparing to develop her career back in China. Jackson was unmoved by her words. They won't find out for now. Don't worry. Then he didn't say anything about getting a lawyer. Instead, he took my hand and stood up. Let me first find out what's going on. Otherwise, it'll be useless even if the lawyer comes. Then, just like that, he left. Left. Ariella's voice was hoarse from shouting as she tried to rush towards the door but was stopped by the police and taken back. We quickly got the accurate information from the police officers. The mastermind behind the arson case at the pig farm was Ariella. In the statements from back then, those 4 men hadn't lied. They were indeed hired by another man, but Ariella had lied. She wasn't hired by that man at all. Instead, she paid that man to act on her behalf. Of course, after that, it was also her who paid to find connections and sent that man away. He disappeared without a trace. In the past 2 years, the police had been trying to catch that man but had never succeeded. It wasn't until Ariella came back from the country where she had plastic surgery that they got the opportunity. My mind couldn't quite keep up. As soon as we walked out of the police station, I quickly asked Jackson, so, that man had always been in touch with Ariella? He shook his head. I don't know. But since they had a deal between them, there must have been some connection. I thought I understood. So, Ariella didn't come back this time to marry you? He turned his head and glared at me again. I'm a married man. Ha! This time it was my turn to roll my eyes at him. That's not what you said when you threw the divorce agreement at me. Jackson had already opened the car door. If I didn't do as she asked and gain her trust, it would have been even harder to figure out the rest of the matter. You might have had to wait another 2 years to know the truth. Jackson got in the car, closed the door. Go home by yourself. I still have things to do. Hey! Damn it. This guy didn't let me finish my sentence again. And this time he didn't even let me take the car and just left by himself, leaving me at the entrance of the police station. I shouldn't have come out in the same car with him, I muttered as I tried to stop a taxi by the roadside. It turned out that my luck had run out with Ariella today and the rest was all bad luck. I stopped several taxis but none of them stopped for me. I didn't know if it was because I was standing at the entrance of the police station. I picked up my bag and walked forward. After walking for a few minutes, I suddenly felt very uncomfortable in my chest and a bit nauseous. I held onto a tree by the roadside to steady myself, but I couldn't catch my breath evenly and really started vomiting. I vomited blah blah, and after throwing up the eggs and milk I had eaten in the morning, I even threw up clear water. After finally stopping vomiting, I felt so weak. I propped myself up against the tree trunk. As soon as I stood up, my vision blurred and I was about to fall down. I immediately crouched down again. I wanted to call Jackson. But thinking about his stinky face and his attitude just now, I put my phone back. I took a piece of candy from my bag, chewed it and swallowed it. After taking a break for a while, I moved to the roadside to hail a taxi. I still felt uncomfortable in the taxi, so I simply asked the driver to take me to the hospital. There was an acquaintance of Jackson's in a hospital where we usually went for medical treatment. I got off the taxi there, took the elevator upstairs and went straight to the acquaintance's office. As soon as I arrived at the door, I heard Jackson's voice, "Let's not tell her for now. Wait until I've sorted everything out." The voice of his doctor friend said, "I don't know what you're up to. Isn't Ariella your wife? Do you really need to hide this from her?" Jackson was silent. After a long while, his voice was obviously hoarse. "She's been living a simple and happy life all these years. It's good. I don't want her to be sad because of me again." Then there was the sound of a chair being moved. I stood still. I came face to face with Jackson. His brows furrowed immediately. "Ariella, why are you here?" "I was so angry, I followed you." "I heard what you just said." His face turned pale all of a sudden. His doctor friend also came out, looked at him and then at me. "Well, why don't you two come in and sit down?" I pushed Jackson aside and walked in. I pretended that I knew everything and tried to bluff them. "What's the situation now?" The doctor looked at Jackson again. "Jackson came to pull me, I'm fine. Let's go. I'll tell you when we get back." I held onto the chair. "Either you tell me now or you leave first." He seemed to have no way to deal with me all of a sudden and let go dejectedly. His doctor friend handed me a diagnosis report. "Stomach cancer?" I looked up at them. Did I read it wrong? Both of them had blank expressions on their faces. Jackson came to his senses and started to pull me. When he couldn't pull me, he hugged me. "It's nothing. It's just a preliminary examination. This hospital is small. I'll go to another place to have it checked again later." I held on to the chair. He even tried to carry me and the chair away together but got stuck at the door. I heard his doctor friend say behind us, "It's not a terminal illness. You can be cured if you get treatment early." I pinched Jackson, "Put me down." He tried several times but couldn't carry me and the chair out, so he could only put us down weakly. I put on a serious attitude and said kindly, "Dr. Liu, is it true that you said it can be cured?" "Of course. How could I lie to you about this? It's only in the middle stage. Actually, I asked him to get treatment a long time ago." "Hey, I'm really okay." Jackson interrupted and I gave him a fierce look. "Shut up." Dr. Liu laughed when he saw his appearance. "Only you can keep him in check." "Well, I didn't know that." Jackson was usually quite arrogant. I was too lazy to argue. Now I just wanted to know how to make this guy get well completely. Dr. Lou's treatment plan wasn't that difficult. The only difficult point was that during the treatment period, Jackson had to take at least 3 months off. He had to completely give up work and stay in the hospital. This was also the reason why Jackson was reluctant to get treatment. The company couldn't do without him. So he had been delaying it. Until it got really serious now, he started to make arrangements for what would happen after his death. According to Dr. Lou, this guy had even written his will. He transferred all his shares in the company and his property to my name. In this way, even if I did nothing, as long as I didn't waste money on the street every day, I could live the rest of my life in peace. As for Ariella, it was also his doing. He had suspected that the fire was related to her a long time ago, but because there was no evidence, Jackson had been looking for it. But he had been looking for 2 years without any results. Recently, he learned that his illness had become serious. He was afraid that if something happened to him, Ariella would come back to trouble me. So, he simply took the initiative to call her back. Ariella thought that Jackson had finally come to his senses and wanted to be with her, so she came back eagerly, but within a few days, she ended up in prison. I didn't participate in this big drama at all. Jackson played it all by himself so perfectly. I was really angry. I pinched his hand twice again. He looked at me without saying a word and held my hand with his other hand. After coming back from the hospital, I asked him, since you were already planning to die, why couldn't you bear to let the company run without you for a few months? Jackson looked helpless. There are a lot of people and complicated affairs in the company. It's a family business, and there's a lot of intrigue. If I didn't know about it, it would be okay. But once I knew, I just couldn't ignore it. I drank some cold water to suppress my nausea. I'll do it. His expression suddenly became very complicated. I waved my hand at him, gritted my teeth hard and went to the toilet first. After coming out, I said to him, Jackson, do you think I'm stupid? Of course not. No one is smarter than you. We've been classmates for so many years. I was even jealous of you. No matter how much you played, you always got good grades. Then what are you worried about if you hand the company over to me? His face fell again, because you're lazy too. You don't want to do anything complicated. So I don't want you to get involved. I didn't want to do it because you were taking care of it. Now that you're going to get treatment, it's time for me, the backup, to give it a try. He was amused by what I said and laughed. What backup? You're my lawfully wedded wife. So it's more reliable to leave this matter to me than to anyone else. Afraid that he still had concerns, I invited his parents over. We agreed that the three of us would help him hold up the company together and he should also focus on getting well as soon as possible. I had been working in Jackson's company for a week and officially took over his position. He also checked into the hospital. One day, my mother-in-law and I were looking at documents in the office when my phone suddenly rang with a ding. It was closer to her. I called her, Mom, could you pass me my phone? When she handed it to me, she suddenly exclaimed, Ariella, are you pregnant? I quickly stood up from my seat and snatched the phone. I saw a test report clearly displayed on the screen. It was the result of my prenatal examination at the hospital yesterday. Because one item said it needed to be sent to another place for testing, it was only sent to me now. I was quite embarrassed. My mother-in-law was so excited that she burst into tears and couldn't even speak properly. This is really. I'm going to tell Jackson that he's going to have a child. I quickly stopped her. Mom, don't say anything for now. Jackson's treatment is the most important thing at present. If you tell him this, he definitely won't let me work anymore, and he won't be able to focus on his treatment either. My mother-in-law nodded at first and then shook her head. No, you shouldn't work anymore. Go home. Your father and I will take care of the company. She suddenly got excited. We're still energetic. We'll help you hold the fort first. You and Jackson, one should get well, and the other should take care of the child. Then your family of 3 will be so nice. Half a month later, Jackson had the stomach cancer surgery. It was a narrow escape. The doctor's repeated advice was to rest and recover without thinking too much about anything. After I came out of the hospital, I received a call from the police station. They said that Ariella wanted to see me and asked if I was free to go there. I went. Unlike last time, there was a fence between us. Her eyes were still full of resentment. Ariella, why you? I looked at her somewhat amusedly. I wasn't interested in such low-level remarks and didn't want to answer. Ariella gritted her teeth. Jackson and I have known each other since we were kids. I'm better than you in every way. Why are you two together? Known each other since we were kids? Yes. When he was a kid and went to his grandmother's house, he even slept in our bed and ate from the same bowl with me. Oh, I see. I understood. But Ariella had a lot of questions and kept talking eagerly. However, the police just asked me to come and see her. They didn't say that I should help her answer those questions. So I just sat quietly and listened to her shouting. When I got tired of listening, I stood up and left without even saying goodbye to her. Ariella rushed towards the fence again. And was stopped and taken back once more. Arson and attempted murder. That should be enough to keep her in prison for quite a while.